Hey guys, welcome back. All right, we're going to talk about the Cambrian explosion. I haven't really talked much about this before, maybe alluded to it in the past. But all I want to do is I like presenting just both sides of the evidence. What we're being taught in school is just indoctrination of evolution, but they don't really have a phrase or something they can talk about when it comes to the Cambrian explosion. There's really no backup for this. So this talks about the sudden appearance of animals in the fossil record where they appear to be fully formed and there's no transitional form. So evolutionists, they would say that, over time we've evolved. Well, that's fine. If that's the case, where are all the transitional forms? Shouldn't you see there's minor variations within the change amongst animals, and we don't. And this, I'm going to kind of go through here, explain this article that the Cambrian explosion is everything appears to be fully formed, and I would argue that yeah, they appear fully formed because that's the way God created them. So let's jump into this; it'll make more sense. But again, I'm not trying to. I know it sounds wrong, but I'm not trying to just present one type of evidence. The issue is, like I mentioned, is in school we're taught one side, so I want to just show that other side, and then you make the decision for yourself whether you believe in evolution or if you say, hey, maybe there's an intelligent designer involved. But of course, I got to throw some scriptures in here. And I think this is pretty relevant. It comes from 2 Peter, and this was predicted 2,000 years ago that a creator just would be completely shafted and no one to talk about it anymore. So I'm trying to bring that back. So this is what it says. It's interesting. It says, knowing this first, that there shall come in the last days scoffers walking after their own lusts and saying, where is the promise of his coming? So people are going to be ignorant of Jesus' second coming. For since the fathers fell asleep, all things continue as they were from the beginning of the creation. So people are going to be ignorant of the creation. And then here it is, the last one. For this they willingly are ignorant of, that by the word of God the heavens were of old, and the earth standing out of the water and in the water, where the world that then was, being overflowed with water, perished. So people are going to be ignorant of the flood. And I'm going to show you here in just a sec. Actually, we're going to skip that. At the end, I have a pretty cool slide here. The Cambrian explosion explained by the flood. And this comes from Institute for Creation Research. And I know people like to say, hey, my articles are biased, but the guy who wrote this article has a PhD. They got super smart people. So if you have an issue, talk to them. This is what it says. I just thought this was interesting. Conventional geologists are still baffled by the Cambrian explosion. Some try to deny that it was sudden, but most admit that Cambrian rocks record the sudden appearance of fossils from nearly every animal group. Again, there's no transitional phases. Everything appears to be fully formed. To me, this is the nail in the coffin for evolution. And the glaring lack of ancestors and rocks below the Cambrian increases the mystery. And in case you're wondering what this fossil is, that's a trilobite. It's like one of the smallest organisms that's found in the fossil record, but you can read about it. A new study of I'm not going to begin to read either a lot of these big words here, but we're going to get through this. A new study in China tries to solve the mystery. The authors claim that all the animals died in an unstable river delta environment, but the internal inconsistencies in their interpretation are better explained by the actions of the global flood. Over 250 species have been identified in the Xinjiang biota, including worms, arthropods, and vertebrates, the highest number of any Cambrian unit. These animals appear suddenly and fully formed in the formation, which contains the special fossil assemblage. The Cambrian explosion is now universally accepted as a genuine, rapid evolutionary event, but the causal factors for this event have been long debated, with hypotheses and environmental, genetic, or ecological triggers, said the co-author of the University of Exeter. Nor can conventional scientists explain the sudden appearance of so many types of animals in the blink of an eye. It's like everything was just completely created, because it was. Publishing in Nature Communications, the team of scientists from several institutions in China, Canada, and the United Kingdom found an uncommon mix of sedimentary deposits, water sources, and fossil types, all mixed in the same rock formation. And I brought this up before, but the only way something fossilizes, it has to be buried rapidly in sediment. So if your dog or cat dies in a backyard, it's just not going to lay there on top and fossilize. The bird's going to come by, pick it up. I've got coyotes, I've got bears, I've got vultures, all kinds of things in my backyard. And so if something's going to die out there, it's going to be gone pretty quick. But even if you bury it in the ground, there's different organisms that go in and eat it. So for stuff to fossilize, you have to have perfect conditions, and stuff I would say rarely, or if at all, fossilizes anymore. But you have to have water and sediment. It has to be be buried very rapidly. And in my other videos you've seen, there's animals washed out to sea that are buried a mile deep down the ocean in sediment. And there's all types of animals, land animals, air, fish. They're all buried in the same spot. Some layers show cross bedding while others show parallel layering, indicating dramatic changes in flow velocities. Others had oscillatory flow deposits suggesting water moving back and forth. Some layers suggested shallow water deposition. Other layers in the formation contained black shales rich in preserved organic debris. These are interpreted by evolutionary scientists to have formed in a deep water setting. In addition, some fossils seem to have been buried in place while others were transported a considerable distance. To uniformitarian scientists, these observations suggest that biota somehow formed simultaneously in both shallow water and deep water, and under rapid flow and slow flow. They even interpret that some fossils were deposited by fresh water while others by marine water. And uniformitarianism, that's just a slow, gradual processes that things evolve. That's what evolutionists say is uniformitarian. Only the high rate of sediment accumulation seemed to be fairly consistent throughout the deposit. It is no wonder the evolutionary scientists admitted, despite hundreds of articles describing taxa, animal types, from the Zhejiang biota and their preservation, there is no consensus interpretation on the paleo environment in which the animals lived, died, and were preserved. And the animals died in masses. So look up this this formation. It's a burial ground for fossils. It's called the Niobrara Formation. It extends from Texas all the way to Canada. And there's land, air, and sea animals all buried together. Some you could see actually a fossilized fish, like they were eating other organisms, and they're found in their stomach. They're even found in their mouths. But you have mosasaur. So if you ever seen that movie Jurassic World, there you've got mosasaurs is buried with land and air animals at the same time. So it's just interesting. You see these animal graveyards all over the world. And in my opinion, even if I take the Bible out of it, the only way something like that happens is it has to be buried rapidly with some type of flood. So again, that's just my opinion. I'm just trying to present just another side here. I'm just curious what people who believe in evolution and that subject, what their thoughts are. Comment below. I'm not trying to be argumentative. I know I get a lot of hate mail on these videos that talk about this. It's fine. It is what it is. But what's your thought? Let's have a cordial conversation below. What are your thoughts on how this happened? Hundreds of specimens. Unizune, a leaf-looking chordate, are preserved on individual bed surfaces. It is hard to believe that these animals were able to cope with such a stressful environment setting, said co-author Gabriella, a paleontologist in the university. However, their fossils show that they didn't cope. They were buried alive in mass graves. Although uniformitarian scientists claim these contradictory observations can be explained by a mixed river and wave-influenced delta, it is still unsatisfactory. Too many unusual depositional indicators present to lump it into a single environment. Furthermore, it contains too many perfectly preserved fossils. So that's the thing. You have to have literally perfect conditions for something to fossilize. Stuff just doesn't fossilize. You have to have the perfect conditions for that to happen. Of such wide variety to be a simple river delta, it needs bigger floods than a single river can provide. And there is glaring a lack of bioturbation, churning of the sediments by burrowers, as would be expected in riverbanks and deltas. This is the last slide here. A better interpretation is Noah's flood. So I should have put the graph on here, but about 4,500 years ago, there was a flood that wiped out everything. The Zhejiang biota resides in the bottommost flood layers in this region of China, part of the, and you guys can read that globally, as a flood began, tsunamis from initial plate motion would have sent massive waves crashing across the shallow seas. Sweeping up animals and sediment, their ebb and flow would have deposited sediments that exhibit oscillatory flow and mix faster and slower velocities as the waves waned and returned. If near the pre-flood coastline, these waves would likely have mixed freshwater biomes with deeper marine water biomes and buried many animals alive. Little time would have been available for intense bioturbation before the next wave and the next layer were deposited. The flood truly gives the best explanation for the data. Evolutionary scientists automatically dismiss any evidence for the global flood. And I do agree that the majority do disregard the evidence, but I actually am starting to read some newer articles circulating, and they're starting to admit have all these fossils, you have to have water involved, buried rapidly in sediment. So they're actually starting to catch up. Science is always trying to catch up to the Bible. That's the way it's always been. It is not even considered. Instead, they resort to convoluted interpretations that do not match the observations. However, the Genesis flood continues to be the most convincing explanation for the Cambrian explosion and the Zhejiang biota. I don't know if that's how you say it. But that's it. That's the whole article. I just thought it was super interesting. Maybe this was a little dry, but I just don't think stuff like this is talked about enough. But do your own research. Don't just listen to me. There's a lot of secular articles that will start to talk about this too. So do your own research. All I'm trying to do is just present another set of evidence that's just never talked about. I just think schools are just indoctrination camps. It's only one side. Evolution is only taught. I think you should either teach both or you teach none and let a kid figure out for himself what it is. But what's interesting too is this is one of my favorite slides is this article, again, from Institute for Creation Research, but on every continent and every country, there's flood legends. There's actually over 200 flood stories across the world. So they'll say like myths or flood legends. That's what they say, but to me, they're not legends. It actually happened, and there's a reason these stories are talked about. But do your own research. Every single continent, every group of people talk about the flood. There's flood legends, and they're just forgotten about, and they rip them out of textbooks. But think about COVID right now. That's a worldwide event. Whether it gets worse, but it seems like things are winding down. But regardless of what happens over the next years, how many years do you think COVID is going to be talked about? Whenever there's some type of big event, it gets talked about for a very long time. And I would say that a flood that was across the whole entire earth is a lot more important than this little minuscule virus. But again, I'm not going to get into it. The point is that whenever you have some type of event happen, the whole world tends to know about it. And that's why there were stories. But look, do your own research. Don't take my word for it. I just kind of want to present the other side of the evidence. So that's it. This video is a day late, but we usually release our main videos on Monday, and then we'll put out a couple small videos throughout the week. So that's it. I appreciate it. If you haven't already, like, subscribe, share. That's the best thing you can do to get this channel continuing to grow. So I appreciate all you. See you guys next time.